How does U.S. military power stack up against North Korea, China and Russia? The diversion of U.S. warships to North Korea is a show of American military power, but how does the nation's weapons capability stack up against others, and can it continue to maintain its superiority? While America is undoubtedly the top dog when it comes to its military, experts say North Korea could still land a massive blow against the U.S. Most pundits think that whatever happens in Korea, if somebody hits the button, the fighting would be very intense but brief and would lead to massive devastation, Professor John Blaxland said. Prof. Blaxland is the acting head of the Strategic and Defense Studies Center at the Australian National University and says while the U.S. has superior weaponry, other countries such as North Korea, China and Russia have massive stockpiles of weapons and trained military to counteract this. According to the Global Firepower website, which collates publicly available information about the military capability of different countries, America is ranked number 1 in terms of its war-making ability across land, sea and air. It has the most powerful military in the world without question, Prof. Blaxland said. The U.S. annual defense budget of $581 billion dwarfs China, which spends $155 billion, Russia on $45 billion and North Korea on $7.5 billion. But if you look at how many soldiers America has access to, it's a different story. The U.S. has an active military personnel of 1.4 million, and a reserve army of 1.1 million. When it comes to soldiers based on the North Korean border, the U.S. only has about 20,000 troops permanently stationed in South Korea, as well as about 8,000 Air Force personnel and other special forces. There were also about 50,000 military personnel based in Japan. Compare this to North Korea, which has 700,000 active soldiers, but a whopping 4.5 million reserves. Prof. Blaxland said North Korea had also massed about 20,000 rockets and missiles on the border with South Korea, and when you are playing a numbers game, technology doesn't always win. There's a saying, quantity has a quality all of its own, he said. North Korea has massed artillery and missile capability adjacent to the demilitarized zone, close to Seoul, which puts it in range of a population about the size of Australia. It's pretty scary. Prof. Blaxland said U.S. troops stationed in South Korea could probably shoot down a large number of missiles, but chances were, some would still get through. It doesn't matter how good your technology is, if they get a few rounds off the ground, there will be mass casualties. The problem is the quantity, just the sheer mass, he said. Especially if you aren't that concerned about how many people die in the process, which Kim Jong-un isn't. It has been estimated that in this scenario North Korea could potentially kill about 100,000 people. So while North Korea may not ultimately win the war against America, it could certainly ensure many people also go down with it. This could also be a problem with any matchup between the U.S. and China or Russia. All three countries have nuclear weapons but would not be motivated to use them, as any retaliation would likely annihilate them as well. Prof. Blaxland said the Russians had massive firepower capability, including ships, submarines and armed forces. Recently the Russians had demonstrated in Ukraine that they had the ability to bombard the 1 kilometer square area of land and basically clean it out. That is a frightening prospect, he said. He said China had put a lot of emphasis on its cyber technology, as well as copying Western technology. It had long-range munitions that could sink an aircraft carrier or knock down satellite systems the U.S. relies on heavily. While there was no question the U.S. had the most powerful and technologically advanced military in the world, Prof. Blaxland said no matter how good an aircraft was, if it was overwhelmed by dozens of enemy craft, then you'll run out of ammo before they do. Another issue is that the U.S. forces are dispersed across the world, with troops in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, as well as Europe, Latvia, Australia, Korea, Japan, Guam and Hawaii. The U.S. is incredibly powerful militarily, but if it takes on more than one big fight at a time, It's probably biting off more than it can chew, he said. In the past, Prophet Laxlan said America's military was designed with the capability to fight 2.5 major theater wars at the same, but these days it is in a position where it could barely do one or maybe 1.5. Bearing in mind that they are already tied down in Afghanistan, Iraq and Syria, they are considerably constrained to fight a major war, he said.